The life of Saints Cyprian and Justina gives one the fullest accounts in Christian literature of sorcery and its power over man. This story could be the product of someone's imagination, but nevertheless, this story is a great example of the divine grace and mercy. In the years before Saint Constantine became emperor, Christians were subjected to everything from suspicion and derision to torture and murder. Young Christian women were especially vulnerable, and many had difficulty in protecting themselves from the amorous advances of men who did not share their faith. Justina of Damascus was the daughter of a pagan parent who had secretly converted to Christianity. They lived in constant fear of getting caught, so they kept their faith a secret. The story goes that Cyprian was a master of the dark arts, and he worshipped the evil spirits. From his early childhood, his misguided parents dedicated him to the service of the pagan gods. Once he attained eminent wisdom in pagan philosophy and the sorcerer's craft, he was initiated into the pagan priesthood on Mount Olympus. Having discovered great power by summoning unclean spirits, he beheld the Prince of Darkness himself speaking with him and receiving from him a host of demons to serve him. When he returned to Antioch, he excelled over his peers. His excessive impudence and arrogance made him challenge the magicians there and to pride himself over them of his knowledge. In the meantime, Justina grew up to become a beautiful woman. She dedicated herself to the heavenly bridegroom and spent her time in fasting and prayer. But Justina soon found herself in a predicament. A young nobleman, suitable for her in every way according to society standards, sought to marry Justina. Without revealing her true reasons in those dangerous times, Justina repeatedly rejected her suitor's proposals. She wished to remain a virgin. The young man was not easily deterred, however, and he sought help from an unlikely, but not uncommon for the time, source, a magician. He sought the help of Cyprian to persuade Justina to succumb to his charms. Cyprian agreed to fulfill the young man's wishes. When Cyprian went to observe the object of his assignment, he was completely smitten by the young woman himself. Her beauty was great, but her humility and kindness to others was greater. Cyprian had never known a woman like this. He was enchanted. He decided to cheat his client and use his magical skills to win her for himself. Cyprian sent an unclean spirit to attack the Holy Virgin. The spirit was meant to arouse carnal passions in Justina. As Justina went about her duties at home, she soon felt herself under intense attack by an unknown demon. She immediately started praying and sought protection in the sign of the cross. She overcame the spirit by fervent prayer to the Lord. When the spirit returned defeated, Cyprian was angry. He then sent another spirit to attack Justina. When the devil approached her, Justina was praying. The second devil also had to return without causing her any harm. Cyprian became angry at the devil because he had put him to shame. Such is your power that even a weak virgin conquers you. he shouted. He sent spirit after spirit to Justina again and again. Every time he sent Justina a host of demons, they found her praying, so they came back defeated. When Cyprian failed, he called the demons and told them, "If you do not bring Justina to me, I shall adopt Christianity." The chief of the demons thought out a device to deceive him. He ordered one of his soldiers to disguise himself and to take the form of Justina and then go to Cyprian. The devil then hurried to meet his master and told him that Justina is soon arriving. Cyprian rejoiced, and he was impatient to meet her. When Satan, disguised as Justina, came to him, Cyprian rejoiced and rose up to embrace her. Because of his great joy in her, he told her, "Welcome, Queen of Women, Justina." Upon the mere mention of her name, Satan, disguised as her, melted away and disappeared like smoke. An unpleasant smell spread out of him and filled the room. Cyprian knew that this was a deceitful trick of Satan, who could not stand before the mentioning of her name. If you take fright at even the mere shadow of the cross, and if the mere name of Christ makes you tremble, said Cyprian, then what will you do when Christ himself stands before you? Cyprian knew he was defeated, but more than that, he knew that it had been due to a higher power, one that he had never encountered before, but that he desired with all his heart to know. The devil then threw himself upon the pagan priest and attempted to beat and strangle him. For the first time, Cyprian tested the power of the sign of the cross and the name of Christ, guarding himself from the fury of the enemy. Cyprian sought help in the same way that Justina had, from the church. He presented himself to the priest Eusebius, whom he had known as a child. To demonstrate his complete desire to give up the life of a magician and become a Christian, Cyprian burned all his books on magic. Very soon, he was admitted as a catechumen. In the following years, Justina continued to be an example of virtue and purity among her fellow Christians, as well as her family, who entered the church through her example. Cyprian started off by sweeping the floors of the church. He then worked for a few years as the doorkeeper. Having completely turned his life to God, he was eventually elevated to priesthood. Cyprian converted so many pagans to Christ that in his diocese no one was left to offer sacrifice to idols, and the pagan temples fell into disuse. And soon he was made the bishop. Justina, in the meantime, was promoted as the superior of her monastery. And then, in the year 304, a fierce persecution of Christians was beginning. During the persecution against Christians under Emperor Diocletian, Cyprian and Justina were arrested and brought to Nicomedia. They were both tortured severely, but they would not renounce their beliefs in Christ as Lord of all. The emperor then casually sentenced them to be beheaded. Saint Cyprian, fearful that the Holy Virgin's courage might falter if she saw him put to death, asked for time to pray. Saint Justina inclined her neck and was beheaded first. After seeing the torments of Saint Justina, a soldier named Theoctistos fell at Cyprian's feet and declared himself a Christian, and he was beheaded with them. The hiero-martyr Cyprian, the virgin martyr Justina, and the martyr Theoctistos suffered for Christ at Nicomedia in the year 304. The relics of Justina and Cyprian, now revered as saints of God who had received the crown of martyrdom, were secretly retrieved and taken aboard ship to Rome. When Saint Constantine changed the world by making Christianity legal, a church was built in Rome for the relics, but they were later translated to the Church of St. John Lateran.